tomorrow, for some of you states, Virginia one of them, is an election day. Very important. We're going to be talking about the gubernatorial race, which features a former Clinton fundraiser against a Tea Party darling, and we'll see who can prevail. But in the meantime, was the president lying? His former opponent says yes. That's the charge from Mitt Romney. He says the president wasn't telling the truth when he said people could keep their health insurance.
Well, those charges come after the Obamacare websites were down again this weekend and still need more work. Charlene Israel has the story.
As the Obama administration scrambles to fix the failed healthcare enrollment website, Republicans are upping their attacks. Former Republican presidential candidate Mitt Romney accused the president of being dishonest with the American people.
I think the key thing that the president is trying to get away from, and that is that he told people they could keep their insurance, and that was not the truth. And whether you like the model of Obamacare or not, the fact that the president sold it on a basis that was not true has undermined the foundation of his second term.
Romney says now the president needs to try and rebuild that foundation by actually working with Congress. Some Democratic lawmakers are also frustrated with the many problems with the healthcare.gov website. They want it to be completely shut down until it's fixed.
You know, I felt, and I said this directly to the president's chief of staff, they ought to take down the website until it was right. They believe that they need to keep it running and that they can sort out the difficulties, that they brought in technological experts from a broad base of the private sector.
I would say to the president, why doesn't he call a timeout on this?
There are also new questions about the security of putting everyone's information online. Representative Mike Rogers says the Obama administration has admitted there was a risk.
They said that they think the risk was acceptable, but their information wasn't at risk. American people's information was at risk. The real threats to these systems, when you have nation states and organized crime groups and criminals trying to get information that is now available on these websites.
Rogers says security needs to be stabilized before any other problems with the website are fixed. Meanwhile, millions of Americans continue to get letters telling them their coverage has been canceled. A California woman suffering from gallbladder cancer calls herself one of the losers of Obamacare in a column for the Wall Street Journal. She says Obamacare is forcing her to give up her world-class health plan, and she could lose her world-class doctor, too. She ends by saying, for a cancer patient, medical coverage is a matter of life and death. Take away people's ability to control their medical coverage choices, and they may die. I guess that's a highly effective way to control medical costs. Perhaps that's the point. Charlene Israel, CBN News.
Well, it's a shocking thing to find a president of the United States who absolutely bald-faced lies over and over again. Well, the Washington Post, a supposedly liberal newspaper, gives him 4 Pinocchios. That means the ultimate in lying, 4 of them. Something has gone amiss. And there's just no way you can recover from that. I mean, he could go before the American people and say it was all a scam, but he's not going to do that because he is a doctrinaire. You've got to understand the mindset. He's a doctrinaire liberal. He wants state socialism as they have in Europe. And he wants to move this country in that direction. That's why when he says he was a greater president than all these others put together, well, that's what he means. It means I've got more towards socialism than anybody else has come along. And the question is now the American people aren't buying it. The test is going to come in the state of Virginia tomorrow, as the issue is going to be on the Obama health care. And John Jessup has that story from Washington. Here's John.
Pat, that's right. Democrat Terry McAuliffe and Republican Ken Cuccinelli are both looking to make tomorrow's election into a referendum on Obamacare. Cuccinelli had been trailing in the polls, but recent surveys show he's within 1 or 2 points of McAuliffe. Cuccinelli is promising to continue the fight he began as the state's attorney general against Obamacare. McAuliffe supports the law and promised to use it to expand Medicaid for health care coverage for 400,000 Virginians. McAuliffe has won the battle of the airwaves by a 10-to-1 margin. The race will be decided by the few people who vote. Turnout could be as low as 30%. The Supreme Court, which asks for God's protection before every public session, will be hearing a case Wednesday over prayer and government. It involves prayer at the start of city council meetings in the small town of Greece, New York. The High Court ruled in 1983 that an opening prayer does not violate the First Amendment, but a federal appeals court in New York ruled against the town's prayer meetings. It said they violated the Constitution by opening nearly every meeting over 11 years with prayers that stress Christianity. Under Chief Justice John Roberts, the Supreme Court has been more open to religion in public life. Pat?
You know, it's time for the Supreme Court to clarify this stuff. They had the so-called Lemon Rule, which Justice Scalia said is like a ghoul that keeps rising from the dead, and it's time we drove a stake through its heart. Well, that's exactly the idea. They haven't clarified their rulings because they have been wrong. Their rulings have been unconstitutional for decades, and it's time they clarified. They probably don't have the heart to do it, but you never know. There's one swing justice who might well make the difference. But it's so hypocritical. They opened their court with a statement, God bless the United States and this honorable court. That is a prayer. They open their own meeting with prayer. They have the Ten Commandments emblazoned in their walls. They've got all these things that show the origin, the spiritual origin of this nation. And yet they have these stupid rules that go down the line. And of course, the Second Circuit is known as being left-wing, and this is a ruling from the Second Circuit. And so the Supreme Court may well overturn them. But nevertheless, it's time we clarified the fact that we are a Christian country. We are a religious people, and our institutions, quote, presuppose the existence of a supreme being. That's what Zorak versus Clausen said. That is a Supreme Court ruling, and it still is law today. John?
Pat, terrorists have killed a Libyan intelligence officer in Benghazi. The officer and his 2-year-old son were killed by a car bomb targeting his family. Benghazi has seen frequent violence in the past year, including killings of security officials and attacks on foreign diplomatic posts. U.S. lawmakers are still demanding answers about the attack on the U.S. consulate that killed 4 Americans last year on September 11th. Senator Lindsey Graham is upset the Obama administration has not allowed Benghazi survivors to testify.
A year later, only one survivor in Benghazi has been interviewed by the Congress, and that person was subpoenaed. I say that it's an ongoing criminal investigation, which is stunning. And I will ask my Republican colleagues and Democratic colleagues, stand up to the Obama administration. Don't let them get away with this. Can you imagine if this was George W. Bush and he told the Congress after 9/11, you can't talk to anybody because there's a potential criminal investigation. We're not going to investigate how 9/11 became the failure that it was.
Graham says it's been more than a year since the attack, and Congress still doesn't know anything about what happened to Benghazi from those who lived through it. The trial of ousted Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi began in Egypt today, just before the judge adjourned it until January 8th. Morsi faces charges of incitement of violence and murder against protesters last December. The trial is his first public appearance since his ouster in July. It comes at a time of bitter division between his Islamist supporters and Egypt's security establishment. The location of the trial was relocated due to planned mass rallies from the Muslim Brotherhood. Egyptian officials say Morsi told the court he's still the legitimate president of the country. If convicted, he could face the death penalty. And here at home, Regent University hosted an old-fashioned community hymn sing, led by former U.S. Attorney General John Ashcroft and a community-wide choir made up of area churches. Last Friday's hymn sing was a celebration of timeless inspirational hymns. Ashcroft told CBN News before the event that his passion is to see a resurgence of the classic hymns and choruses that bind us together in faith.
The Bible tells us that we should teach each other and admonish each other and encourage each other with hymns and spiritual songs. That's literally the language of Scripture. And hymns that have real content and hymns that reflect the nature of God.
The event drew people from around the area. And Pat, I love praise and worship, love gospel music too, but I grew up in a church that sang hymn songs, and to me the words of hymns, these new tunes simply can't touch the way that words of hymns minister to the heart.
You're absolutely right. You know, John Wesley's brother, Charles, wrote 6,500 hymns. And the whole Wesleyan revival was based on singing the great song, but these were magnificent songs that were singing. Oh, for 1,000 tongues to sing my great Redeemer's praise. And some of these choruses are kind of, you know, popping up in these so-called worship times. It doesn't have the same impact. And so I appreciate John Ashcroft. He is a great man, but a very humble man. And I think the fact that he was singing when he first got elected to public office. He and another guy went around, they had guitars and they sang. The people in Missouri seem to like that. They still do. Well, Terry, it's good to see you. You've been out for a few days.
I have been. I've been out having a little vacation time, getting some things done at home that need done.
That was not a vacation. You're cleaning your house. It's a big mistake.
An appeals court is siding with the Ohio business owners who challenged the Obamacare birth control mandate. They argue the mandate to provide contraceptive coverage would make them violate their Catholic beliefs. The ruling by a Washington, D.C. court says the mandate limits the free exercise of religion. The case is just one of many of the birth control issue, which likely will be resolved by the Supreme Court. Superbook is now on the air in Indonesia. More than 300,000 people tuned in for its September launch. It aired on MNC TV, one of the top-ranked national networks. CBN organized a launch event to promote the series broadcast. A few weeks before, thousands of children and parents came to watch a Superbook episode and participate in interactive games and fun. CBN's regional director for Indonesia said in a press conference, the purpose of Superbook is so that Indonesian children can learn about and have noble characteristics like God. You can find out more about what CBN is doing around the world by logging on to cbn.com/international.